Hey, Grace Kids. Here we're talking about Hannah and Samuel today, and just a very unique story again of how God works, and He answers prayer, and He's there with us, and He speaks to us. And so here we go. God called Hannah's son to share God's plan. So this comes from 1 Samuel chapters 1 through 3. And so if you want to read that afterwards, you can, or pause it right now. You can read it beforehand. But 1 Samuel chapter 1 through 3. Our verse for the next several lessons is Jeremiah 10:6. And here's the verse. For as much as there is none like unto thee, O Lord, thou art great, and thy name is great in might. And so God is great. His name is great. Think about it. When people think of your name, what do they think of? When I think of my God and His name, I think of greatness and just all that He's done, all the great things that He's done for me and for you. And so I hope you're trusting in Him. But this is our question, our big question for the next set of lessons. Is anything or anyone greater than God? The answer is no. God is greater than everyone and everything. So I hope you get that question and that answer. Is anyone greater or anything greater than our God? No. God is greater than everything and everyone. So as we get into our lesson, we're going to be talking about a man starting out here whose name is Elkanah, and he's from Ephraim. Now he lived with his wife, and his wife, I mean, they're happy together, but his wife was struggling. She wanted children. They wanted a family. They wanted to grow their family, and she wasn't having any children. So every year, Elkanah would go to the tabernacle and make sacrifices and worship God. He was doing what needed to be done, and Hannah, she went with him. And she went and prayed. She prayed to God, Lord, if you give me a son, I will dedicate him to you. He will serve you all of his life. So she dedicated this son that she's hoping that God would give to her. And a priest was watching. He was at the doorpost watching her pray. And he thought something was seriously wrong because her lips were moving, but nothing was coming out. So he thought, maybe something's wrong with her. Maybe she had too much to drink or something. There's some issue here. But yet, there was nothing wrong. She was just praying to God and just not letting her words come out audibly to where he couldn't hear her. Okay? So Hannah says, I've been pouring my heart before... let me rephrase that here. I have been pouring out my heart before the Lord. She says, letting God know what her major concern is. She's praying. She's praying. Have you ever done that? Have you ever just let God know exactly what you were needing in that moment? And so here it goes. Eli said, go in peace. That's his response when he figured out that she was actually praying. Go in peace. May God answer your prayers. May God answer his prayers. So she was probably pretty excited about that God might answer her in giving her a child. So she returned home. God did answer her prayers. She gave birth to a son named Samuel. Samuel. I don't know if you've ever heard of Samuel, but here it is. This boy was named Samuel. So when he was no longer a baby and he was weaned, she actually took him to the tabernacle and praised God for answering her prayers, and she pledged Samuel to serve God, and she worshiped God there. She pledged him, and she actually returned home and left Samuel with Eli so he could serve in the tabernacle. Wow. I've always kind of struggled with that because I'm thinking, man, I wouldn't want to be left behind by my mother. But she did, but she had a purpose. She wanted to give him over to God to serve in the tabernacle. So that's exactly what he did. And every year she'd come and visit and give him a new robe. Now God gave her more children. He blessed her with more children, and their family grew. So it's very exciting. But Eli kept getting older and older, and his sons who served as priests, they were not doing so good. They were not living for God. They were very heavy sinners, and Eli tried to confront them. Nothing was going on. And they weren't responding well to him. They weren't obeying their parent. So there was a lot of issues here. And Eli and Samuel are in bed, in their own separate beds one night, sleeping, and God calls out to Samuel. Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel thought it was Eli, so he'd run into Eli's room and say, "Hey, here am I. I'm here. What do you need?" And "I'm sleeping. I don't know what you're talking about." So Samuel would go back to bed. You hear it again. "Samuel, Samuel." And it happened 3 times. And then Eli figured out. He said, "Oh, God's trying to talk to you." So here's some instructions. Go back to bed, and when God tries to speak to you, you say this. He said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." So that's exactly what Samuel did. And God came in and told Samuel that he was going to judge Eli and his family for their sin. That's a tough message, isn't it? And yet, the next day, Samuel was afraid to tell Eli, because that'd be tough to tell Eli. "Hey, Eli, you're going to get judged. You got some problems coming up because of all your issues." And so Samuel struggled with it, but Eli said, "Hey, I want you to tell me." So Samuel finally did. He told him. He told him what God's plan was. So Samuel grew up. God was with him all the way through, and everyone knew that Samuel was God's messenger, because Samuel would tell them God's plans for Israel and what they needed to do. So how does Christ fit into all of this? See, Samuel used God's words, the ones that he told him to say, to tell Israel what God is like and what he wanted from them. See, Jesus, the Son of God, told the world about God's plan and showed what God is like and gave of himself for us. And it even says in John 1:1 that Jesus is the Word. He's the Word. He is the gospel that's been sent for us to be able to have that. He's the good news, salvation. All right? So there's your Christ connection. So let me ask you a few questions, see if you're listening. All right? It says, what did Hannah want? She wanted a son, didn't she? And so what did Hannah do after the son was born? She actually took him and dropped him off at the tabernacle and committed him to God and said, "Hey, you're going to be serving God for the rest of your life here. You're going to stay here." And she returned home without Samuel. So what did Samuel say after he knew it was God speaking to him at that one night when he was sleeping? He said, "Speak, for your servant heareth." Okay, speak. And he's claiming, "Hey, I'm your servant, God. Go ahead, speak. I'll listen. I'll pay attention." So will God always give what we ask for? I mean, have you asked for a few things and not gotten what you've asked for? Yeah, that happens, because sometimes that's not the best for us. So, I would love a Stingray Corvette to drive around, but has God given that to me? No, it's not the best thing for me right now, okay? And you probably asked for a few things. Maybe you wanted a few things. Maybe it's just not the best thing for you. Maybe it'd be a distraction from God. God knows exactly what we need. But I've had answers to prayer, and God's provided. He's gifted money to pay the bills and food to feed to my children and my family and so many other things. He's worked in people's lives, helped them to see the light. So there's a lot of good stuff that he does answer, but he doesn't always answer the way that we want him to answer. So how can you hear from God today? Well, that's from God's Word. As we read God's Word, we understand how he communicates to us and what he's saying. And it's so very important that we do read, that we do listen to what God says to us. Can you think of a time that you've ever been afraid of telling God's message? Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes, to tell people that they've got a problem and it's called sin and that they're going to go to hell for it, that's difficult to say. But yet that's God's message, and so we should say it. We don't want to be mean about it, but we do want to help them out and tell them the truth, okay? So yeah, sometimes it's a little scary to say some things that God stated to us, because people don't like to hear some of the stuff that God stated. So we can be brave in what God does state to be able to relay that to others, especially the gospel. That's so very, very important. So what's our activity for today? Our activity is to get with someone in your family and they mouth a word and see if you can guess what that word is. See, I just mouthed the word. I don't know if you saw it, but I said grace. And so, kind of like our church. So, you say, well, what is that activity all about? Well, it's because it'll remind you of when Hannah prayed and Eli saw her and there was nothing coming out of her mouth. It was just the words that she was saying. So, hopefully that'll remind you of all that's going on there. So, hope you have a wonderful day. And I hope you check into our Wednesday night Bible study here this evening. And if not, you can get on our YouTube and check out more lessons and hopefully learn more about God. So we'll talk to you later.